When Epcot Center opened in 1982, the Central Future World was anchored by Communicore. Despite having existed within two separate buildings, it was considered to be a distinct pavilion and hosted a number of rotating exhibits with corporate sponsors, focusing on the importance and future of communication. While certainly interesting, the various exhibits all tended to date themselves rather quickly. They often focused on computer technology that quickly became outdated or were otherwise superficial and gimmicky. While many of these attractions would manage to exist throughout the life of Communicore, the entirety of the pavilion was shut down in January of 1994, reopening in July of the same year as Innoventions. Very much in the spirit of Communicore, Innoventions would focus on a series of exhibits intended to be educational but also fun. These would be a lot more varied though, moving away from computers and communication, instead looking at various facets of what the future could hold. Innoventions was certainly a lot more 90s in its presentation, and while not as inherently educational as Communicore, it was certainly more fun and substantial, at least throughout the mid-aughts. Like Communicore, exhibits would constantly be replaced or updated, and one of the most notable was Ice Station Cool, which opened in Innoventions West in 1998. While both Communicore and Innoventions would leave a lasting impact on many people, Ice Station Cool and its subsequent replacement of Club Cool would become staples of the Epcot culture. So, while a small part in the overall project of Innoventions, I thought it would be fun to take a quick look at the history of this attraction, reminiscing on what it meant to parkgoers. It undoubtedly had a surprising influence on the Epcot experience over the last few decades, before it was turned into the little store that we have today. You know, the one with all the fun sucked out of it. So let's dive into Club Cool and see what it had to offer. Like many of the other exhibits throughout Communicore and Innoventions, Ice Station Cool would have a corporate sponsor. In this case, the exhibit worked more as an actual advertisement for Coca-Cola, rather than an attraction that simply slapped their name on it. The entrance to the attraction has a fun facade, utilizing communication equipment and a snow track to set the scene. On further inspection, you can read a silly plaque that introduces guests to the Refreshus Maximus expedition, where Coca-Cola Coolologists, as they're called, have set out to find the origin of cool. This is very 90s, but in the best way possible. Upon entering the tunnel through the facade, you'll discover more information, teasing their team's coolest discovery yet. As you move through some strip curtains, you'll find yourself in an artificially cold and icy hallway with small snow particles falling from above, collecting on the sides of the tunnel. As you continue further in though, you'll encounter what I presume to be a frozen Neanderthal, with a plaque claiming that he was found in subarctic ice. It goes on to ask, what came first, man or refreshment? On further inspection, you can see him frozen in action, reaching for a bottle of refreshing Coca-Cola. On exiting the tunnel, a sign will ask you to not take the snow outside, which I'm sure hundreds of children have ignored as they take a dirty snowball with them. Moving into the shop, the Arctic Expedition theming would continue. Various props on display would reinforce the silly story, and even the soda dispensers had a metallic utilitarian cover meant to play into the theme. Along the mural on the wall, you could find a globe haloed by glass Coke bottles, meant to reflect the various international sodas you could sample here. There were obviously dispensers placed around the room, but you could also find various stations here along the mural as well. Before exiting outside, the rest of the exhibit would feature Coca-Cola merchandise, as is standard today. Ice Station Cool wasn't really educational, but as far as corporate advertisements go, was pretty humorous and fun. Being able to sample different sodas produced by Coca-Cola that were sold in different countries was an interesting insight into the tastes of other cultures though. It's a shame that Ice Station Cool didn't last very long though, because it very much reflects a different era, one where theming was over the top and overt, but in my opinion, was far superior to most of what Disney is building today. Ice Station Cool would then close in June of 2005, removing the exterior theming, the snow tunnel, and completely changing out the interior of the shop. It would then reopen in November of the same year as Club Cool, which I think you can easily recognize as a downgrade. It abandoned the Arctic aesthetic and instead went straight Coca-Cola Club, which I wouldn't even really consider theming. Still, the spot remained quite popular. So, why did it change? Well, there's not a lot of information out there, but if I had to speculate, I would say that's just simply a matter of maintenance costs. Keeping the ice tunnels cool and producing the snow was probably something that Disney and Coca-Cola no longer wanted to pay to maintain. So the new location was a cheap band-aid fix with a quick turnaround. Still, despite the obvious downgrade in theming, the location still became a fundamental element of the Epcot experience. With the new iteration, many of the previous sodas such as Germany's Mezzo Mix, China's Smart Watermelon, and Japan's Vegeta Beta were kept, but others were swapped out. Most notable of the preserved sodas was Beverly, an Italian aperitif that was discontinued in 2009, but is still produced for Club Cool and the various World of Coca-Cola tasting stores found throughout the United States. It's the only soda to have remained throughout all iterations of this attraction, which I assume is because of the reactions it provoked. Among the different Coca-Cola stores where you can taste the various international sodas, Beverly became popular because of its bitter taste. People would often bring their friends to try the soda, often misleading them into drinking it and treating it like a prank to see their reaction. If you legitimately don't enjoy Beverly, then that's fine, but its actual taste isn't actually that bitter. The countless number of times I've seen people try the soda and then clearly fake a negative reaction because they think they're supposed to, is what I think kept this version of Club Cool going. It was always a good time to stop in and try the various sodas for free, because it became a weird cultural phenomenon if you were visiting Epcot. So this version of Club Cool would persist until September of 2019, and would then close along with the rest of Innoventions. It would then move to the eastern side of the park, opening again as Club Cool in September of 2021, located adjacent to the Creation Shop. Like that shop and the new Connections Eatery, Disney leadership decided that the proper aesthetic was to go as bland and boring as possible. In fact, they put so little effort into this that the space almost feels temporary, just hastily thrown together. Of course, that was the issue with the previous iteration, but when you think contemporary Disney can go no lower, they always somehow manage to defy your expectations. This time, the drink selection is a whole new roster with only Beverly returning, but these choices are also far less distinct and interesting than what was previously offered. Simply put, the experience is just far less memorable than it was previously, tucked away in this sterile hallway. The lack of crowds in comparison to the old space, as generic as that was, seems to reflect the general disinterest from Epcot's park goers as well. It seems that even pretending to dislike Beverly isn't enough to save this version of Club Cool. So, I just wanted to cover the brief history of this weird corporate advertisement that you could find in Epcot, chronicling its fall from a small but interesting themed experience to becoming just some obligatory shop thrown in as an afterthought. A decent chunk of time goes into researching and putting together video essays like this, so if you want to do me a favor, leaving a like on the video really helps it out. As always, you can subscribe and hit the bell icon so as to be alerted to new videos as they release.